Secret of Mana, Trials of Mana, Legend of Mana. There's been several Mana series games over the years, but it's remained a very low-key series for a long time, even though Secret of Mana was a masterpiece with unique combat as far back as the SNES and still has one of the most visually stunning color palettes and outstanding soundtracks to this day. We have ways to play the early Mana games now, and the Secret of Mana remake was a solid one. It is a dated style of game by today's standards, at least as far as combat goes, a bit slow with charged attacks and a timer between swings, and it has a heavy story focus for a multiplayer game. These are excellent, beautiful games. They probably won't do much to really compel you to pick up Visions of Mana if you're looking for that for the gameplay. Reality is, Visions does not play like those games at all. If there was one somewhat similar title, it would be the new Trials of Mana remake that changed the combat system much like Final Fantasy VII Remake did. Trials of Mana, or Seiken Densetsu 3, came out right after Secret of Mana, had the same style of combat. It was not released in the West, sadly. The remake, however, was completely different. A fantastic game, but definitely a different one. Playing like a prototype test for what Visions of Mana is looking to accomplish. And I would put money on that was part of testing some new ideas before they risked funding a full new game. I think there's going to be a lot of similarities, while also a lot of refinement and perfecting what they started with Trials. Visions brings a bit more to the table, things like using elements as a part of exploration, using a mana spirit to slow down rapidly passing platforms so they can be jumped across, there is vertical exploration, and an open world. Along with mounts, and with spirits having different abilities, there's room for Metroidvania-style re-exploration of areas at different times, which works well with a semi-open world game. Just as the Mana games going back to the SNES are some of the most beautiful games to this day, Visions is not a hyper-real game, but has a gorgeous style and vibrant color that is far too welcome in a sea of muddied, muted palettes and ugly, painfully realistic models that are hard to look at. Visions of Mana looks cute and maintains the adorable animals and pretty character designs. Just look at these wolf puppy mounts. You're never going to see a blood-coated space marine on the back of one of these, and that is definitely the main vibe for this game. Visions of Mana, it is not Space Marine. Space Marine 2 coming out soon, let's go! Visions of Mana steps up to the simple combat style of previous Mana games. It has more depth to elemental spirit use, there are abilities and classes with greatly different specializations to change up combat. Ultimates, not too unlike what was in the Trials of Mana remake, and jumping allows for aerial combat and flying enemies. Comparatively, this is more advanced in combat complexity than others in this IP. Yet we are still talking about a Mana game here. This is more about relaxing fun than tension and challenge. To wrap up, I have loved the Mana series my entire life. Secret of Mana is still one of my favorite games of all time. I've loved many of the games in the series. Visions of Mana, gameplay-wise, does not feel like them. If you're hoping for the same combat style, this won't exactly feel like that. As its own game, Visions of Mana made a great early impression, and captures the aesthetic in music, characters, monsters, and vibrant coloring. Captures the style of the Mana games. I want to see good games come out. Despite the chatter on Twitter, gamers like getting good games. This one has a lot of promise. This is not going to be Elden Ring or Wukong with crazy hard boss kills. It's not going to get people talking about how realistic the animations and the character models are with the mocap and high-budget animations like Concord, my pick for Game of the Year. This is easy to pick up, has the design choices of games from decades ago, and who knows, maybe Square Enix can be convinced to breathe some life back into a few more of their sparsely touched IPs with outstanding backgrounds. Here's looking at you, Chrono Trigger Cross. How do you leave one of the most fondly remembered franchises in RPG history untouched for decades? So, were you planning to pick this one up? Have you given it a try? How are you feeling about it? How does it compare? Consider the Secret of Mana remake, Trials of Mana remake, or the Mana collection with the first three in the series. Legend of Mana also had a remaster, and at this point we've seen remakes and remasters for just about everything. Just like to do Lufia and Breath of Fire, Suikoden was announced to return. Lately we had a Persona 3 remake, Super Mario RPG. And yeah, I love seeing these games come back. I love seeing new games even more though. So I'm hoping Visions of Mana finds great success and encourages more love to be given to RPG franchises that have just been stagnating for decades, instead of just the remasters. Visions of Mana is out in some places already, will be out soon in others. 2024 has been a great year for games, so I'm hoping the games industry will keep up this momentum. You are starting to give my jaded, miserable soul some hope for the first time in years. So here's hoping the whole package lives up to the expectations set with Trials of Mana, taking a great but simple 3D combat system and expanding on it, while keeping the visuals and music as best in class. This is an early impression look at Visions of Mana. I fully intend to revisit this in a week or two, once I've had time to fully appreciate it.